You're listening to Wanna Coffee with Kai Alicia.
And Adriana.
Talking
Random.
sensible
Shit.
We both eat quite a bit of vegetables.
Are you vegan? Are you vegetarian?
I'm vegan, but I would say that I'm a flexitarian. So when I need to, I will eat fish. Sometimes I will have meat. I understand those of you who are listening, you may be offended by that, especially if you're a hardcore vegan or a hardcore vegetarian. I apologize in advance. But I try to listen to my body. And my reason for being vegan was really done out of health considerations, not really out of anything social or political. So what about you?
Okay, I think I will fall into the flexitarian spectrum, you know. You could say veganism and vegetarianism as a diet or more like a political statement or, you know, social cause.
Yeah, I think
how does it fit?
For me, it's just it's a diet, but I know for a lot of people, it's a political stance or a social thing, like a cultural thing, like very cool right now. It's very cool, for example, in America to be vegan. The whole thing is, vegan. Everything's vegan. Can we get this vegan? And I don't know. I feel like this craze happened because I don't believe it happened because people were like, I want to feel better. And so I'm going to eliminate. It may be closer to a PETA type of thing where people are like, no, don't kill don't kill animals. Or maybe it's about the environment type of a thing. I'm not 100% sure why, but now in America, everything is vegan. And even here, it's cool, it's hip to be vegan. Why do you ask?
Well, I've been doing like some research, and I think what I could conclude is like in the situation we're now, I would say that is more like a fashion. It kind of transform. You don't see it as a political act, or at least like the majority of people, they do it now. They see it more like a fashion, a wellness kind of, trend, and they don't see it as what it started like, which was animal rights and, kind of a protest.
Okay, so it did start out.
Yeah, back in the 70s, when this got traction, it was like a political statement, like, hippies, like, you have to be peaceful, you can't kill things. You can't kill things. Who do you think you are? Because the human, do you feel that you're more powerful than other beings? And yeah, it started like that in the West. So it really had like bad connotations back then, because you will figure that someone that was vegetarian was hippie, crazy, marijuana smoking type of guy that wouldn't do anything productive to society.
Okay.
And now it's more, cool. How did it change into a wellness thing? You have to ask Instagram, I will say. But yeah, I would say nowadays, I wish it could be more political instead of wellness, maybe. Yeah, I see it now, and like you browse through Instagram, it's like, yeah, I lose weight, and yeah, I feel so light, and look at me. You see all these influencers, and they kind of lose sometimes the benefits of this whole diet can have in the environment and in society. But that's another point of view. I guess.
100% agree with that. I didn't actually, I was just making a guess to see, thinking that like, that's probably where it started. For me, it started, I got the pressure from my husband, who didn't like that I was burping all the time.
Oh.
And that I, had stomach problems, He was like, you really need to check that out. I really don't think every time you eat meat, this is what happens. Every time you have dairy, this is what happens. You need to see if you're allergic or, having an adverse reaction to these foods. And I was like, what? Allergic? I just eat whatever I'm given. That's how I've been raised. You don't discriminate. You just, you've got food in front of you. And not that we grew up poor or we grew up...
No, but you have food.
You're just grateful for the food.
Yeah.
That's it, So it's like, you think I'm allergic? Says, what do you mean? I eat everything, you know? I've never not eaten everything. So it was very like confronting. I remember when he said these things to me, and I'm like, I should review my diet. Because even my mom would say things like, you have digestion issues, but she would never say, why don't you take a look at your diet? She would say things like, stop drinking coffee and stop drinking Diet Coke, you know, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But when it came to food, no, you know? And that's really interesting.
And because that's new, I would say for her generation, maybe that was something unheard of. Like, it's food. Food is either good or it's good. Exactly. or good. Like, the only things that wouldn't be healthy for you would be something processed.
Yeah, or my mom had this thing. You're right, generation, because my mom had this thing about high fat. Mm-hmm. High fat and obviously highly processed food, but she never wanted lots of fat in things. And I'd be like, but my mom was part of that whole like jazzercise, you know, and get outside and wear the weights on your ankles type of a thing, you know?
No, 80s mom doing her abs.
Yeah. But what are you? So you consider yourself a flexitarian?
Yes, but I don't know. Yeah, I should be a flexitarian. I don't think that I could live as a vegan, because it's not that I will miss it, but sometimes it's just you just feel like having some meat. We went for dinner with my partner, and he's a vegetarian. So he's like, okay, let's have some hamburgers. And I was like, yeah, I've been eating for a month vegetarian things that I don't need meat. But then I was like, oh God, it's a hamburger. And I just imagined the patty so thick, you know, being grilled. And I was like, no, I'm sorry. I just need to have this. You know, what I come to the realization is that meat should be a luxury. It feels like that to me now. Like I just got to the point that okay, I can have the same cuisine that I had back home when I was eating meat, and with vegetables. I've seen the difference. Like I feel the difference in my body. I pretty much eating the same, but just, you know, minus the beef. And now I say, like, I'm not against eating it, but it should be something that is like a gift, like it was before. A gift, a reward for something, or like a luxury, an indulgence, and not something that you could eat every single day. Like, okay, I had something for lunch. I got steak for lunch. I can have duck for dinner, something like that. I think that has changed, and I wouldn't agree with that, because at the end, just start reading. I think that if you start being vegetarian, you start kind of try to educate yourself. And you see the repercussions, and you try to give a pat in your back and say, like, hey, it's not just me, I'm doing something good. And you start learning and say, like, maybe my ways were not that great. And because I've been doing that, I've been like, maybe I was not in the right when I was eating meat before. So I think it could be like, it can grow from a diet to a political statements, the new social point of view, I guess.
I mean, all of my brothers are vegan, which is and one's a vegetarian. Would you classify yourself more of a vegetarian or a vegan, or do you know what I'm saying? Are you like, where do you lean?
No, it's a vegetarian, sometimes flexitarian.
Okay.
Like, but I will say like 80% I'm vegetarian.
Okay. All right. And that's been going on for how long?
8 months now.
Does it? And it feels good.
Yes, it does. I feel so different. I can vouch for it. I feel so different. My body, I look at the mirror, and it's not the same person that it was 8 months ago. You feel more energized, I will say. You feel, you know, there's this kind of fatigue you get when you work really hard, and when you don't eat well, and you feel like you're dragging yourself. I haven't felt that in a long time. So I think it's because the change on my diet.
Okay.
Did you feel any difference when you changed?
Yeah. Almost right away. I felt less, I mean, all the things. Less bloated, less gassy, better bathroom regularity, all that sort of like TMI stuff, I mean, I never really ate that much meat. My mother grew up poor, and so the amount of meat was a luxury, for her. And so even though in our family we had meat with every like dinner, we didn't have it for lunch, we didn't have it for breakfast. And the amount of meat we had, like if we were having like a sausage, it would be like half a sausage. There were never any extras.
Oh, that's good.
And I think that was because of the way my mom grew up, not because we didn't have it. We always had food. We had more than enough food. So it was almost very easy for my brothers to turn vegan and vegetarian. For me, it was a little bit harder because as I grew older, I started to get into these fads. I tried an all protein diet for like a year. I tried low fat. I tried all kinds of things to help me with my health. And also to help me like with fitness. Like I wanted to do like a whole bunch of different things. It was harder for me to let go of meat because I started to have it as a regular thing all the time. But yeah, once I made the adjustment and I stopped eating it, I noticed a difference right away. However, I started to get in the habit of eating the same things over and over again and pretty much all the time. Because you're limited, if you have a vegan diet, I think in what you can eat, it's more strict. And honestly, it's a bit lonely. Because you know what I mean? Like you go out to eat with friends and you're like, oh, I'm vegan. And then you have to be like, sorry, I can't have that meal. This is why I say I'm a flexitarian. I will, as much as it affects me, I will do it because I don't like to put people out. I don't like to single myself. I don't like to make myself feel or make other people feel like they have to accommodate for me or...
But that is not an accommodation, I will say. It's like saying, for example, I'm allergic to shrimp. I know. And I have to say, hey, I cannot go to this type of restaurant. I cannot have this. And it's a diet restriction. Yeah. So
I think it's also just an upbringing thing, which for a lot of people too it's a cultural thing. It's almost like I feel like you're denying someone's, like someone making you food or something.
Yes,
and
that's
so
true.
I feel guilty, and I shouldn't. You're right, because my body has an adverse reaction to it. But I will, for example, and you've seen me many times have, pizza.
Yeah.
With pepperoni on it, and I will indulge, and it'll be so great. But the next day. So I always have to prepare myself, and say to myself, all right, there's a huge possibility that this is going to happen. Or I notice a difference not having meat. I notice a difference not having dairy. I will have this lactose-free, it's my guilty pleasure, lactose-free Philadelphia cream cheese.
Oh.
I think going back to your point when you said like it's really easy to change your diet and then change your mental state on it not just being a diet but sort of this way of life, or having more of a political or social opinion about it. Yeah. And I think that's really cool. But I have a tendency to stay away from that now for a number of reasons. I'll tell you, but I'd love to know why you feel like you're there and what made that change for you.
Well, the thing is that my partner, he was like trying to convince me not to get beef from the supermarket, and I was like, look at this chicken, at the chicken thighs there. Oh God, I want them grilled, I want it and everything. Anyways, he was like, what's the difference between that chicken and your cat? And I was like, oh, my cat, don't even mention her. And it was right. They were both sign beings. They were both animals with feelings. I was thinking like, yeah, he's right. And you start thinking about the repercussions of your diet, not only like for animals. If you start thinking like, seriously, we all should watch like the method people use to sacrifice these animals. And if you are okay with that, it's like, okay, maybe you should think about your feelings, because it's cruel. It's cruel, like definitely the way they are being raised and the way they are killed and being processed, and is inhumane. I will say maybe that's. I think it is considered a political statement, because obviously we are being raised like humans here on the top, and you shouldn't think about animals. But maybe that's cultural. But you kind of like. You have to think about these things, and why are they happening? Where is your food coming? And also, for example, you start learning like it is impossible not to see like the climate change and how is it related to this. Like you start, like adding 2 and 2, like you see that this actual situation is related to this, and how does that relates to me? Oh, it relates to me because I'm doing this kind of diet, this kind of attitude that I have. And it is not just with food. Also, you can see animal cruelty. You can see it's not only food. You can see it, cosmetics, vaccines, medicines, all of them being tested in animals. And that's also what vegan stands for, like no cruelty towards animals. And it's not just food, it's so many things that we tend to forget they are there, and we just take them for granted. And no, they're still happening, these situations. So you start pondering. And for me, I think it is not that I am there, like I wouldn't say I'm a vegan and I'm pro animal rights, but yeah, you learn to grow that you get to be aware that you're being part of something, and that your everyday decisions have repercussions.
You develop a bit more of sensitivity towards that. I would agree with that, actually. For me, everything's about the feeling, right? So it's like I feel this piece of meat and I'm just like, oh, immediately, like it feels like this. And then, I have to think about, like, because I don't have some medical explanation as to why it feels like this for me, right? But I'll have to think to myself, well, why does it feel like this? Is the way that this thing die, like, am I getting the soul, as froofy as that sounds, am I getting the tortured soul of this, like, animal? And that's why I feel this way. The likelihood, if I'm looking at it really logically, the likelihood is no. But if I'm looking at it on a, froofy sort of existential meaning of type of thing, maybe. A lot of people believe, and a lot of cultures believe, that the way an animal's killed is really important to know. And before you eat your food, you should have some kind of a blessing or some kind of a prayer, so that you don't eat the spirit, the negative energy of this thing. Because at the end of the day, they say that, everyone says that everything is matter, right? Everything is energy. So
from what we have said in the past few minutes, we haven't said anything that is logical. That is, these are our principles, and this is really extremist, and this is like something shocking. Like, I don't think that I will tell any of my friends, like, will you eat your dog? Is that extremist? They're like, no, whoa. Like, it is not that dramatic anymore. But I think the part that is shocking, at least in the West, is that maybe being vegetarians and vegan is going against what the West has accomplished in terms of a society that is sustainable and is prosperous and is rich, and food is your identity, and food is being provided. And so the fact that you have this banquet here and you're not eating it, why are you denying yourself that? This is your identity. This is the hard work of your parents and your grandparents, etc., and everyone that was behind you. And if you change that, suddenly it's shocking. Even not going that far. Say, I've just read a meme that says like, shout out to these vegetarian guys that they don't get scared because toxic masculinity guys, they're saying like, no, you have to eat beef. Even like in gender roles, you see how the way you eat influences how you're looked at and perceived.
Absolutely. I think that's a really interesting point. I think in saying that, I think it's very expensive to eat like a vegetarian or to eat like a vegan. And I think it's really hard to maintain, especially in countries like America. I don't think it's really sustainable. And I think that I think that it's a class thing in America, which offends me. And I think it is here too, to be honest. I think those who are vegetarian or vegan consider themselves a little bit more, conscious and woke and, the alternative, and all these things are like cool things, trendy things at the moment. When I first moved here, and I was friends with this Russian German girl who was vegetarian and was raising her daughter to be vegetarian. She told her daughter in front of her daughter's friend, because her daughter had said, "Why isn't so-and-so vegetarian?" And she goes, "Oh, she's just not enlightened." And as much as there was validity to it, because it's almost exactly what you're saying, in that you can start a diet for reasons that are like, let's say you need to be healthier, but then later do study and research.
Yeah, I have the knowledge now and I can see the light. You're right.
You know what I mean? And so it's natural to be like, wow, I get it now. And I think it's incredible to be in that place, to be able to do that. But there are a lot of people who just can't. You know what I mean? And even if they wanted to, just can't. And I think that's a majority of a lot of people, not necessarily here, but in America, places like America, where it is like a trend right now. And a lot of other countries, like my cousin in South Africa, when I told her that I was vegan in 2017, she's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And she's like, "I would have loved to have known about all this stuff and been more on this healthy train." And I was like, the reason I didn't tell you is because you don't have the resources. Your country does not have the resources. This little bit of tofu is going to cost you like 200 rands. You know what I mean? Which is a lot of money, as opposed to this amount of money. And then you're going to feel some kind of shitty way because you can't be like me.
But the fun part is, I think it's about being enlightened, and also it's about how society has, like, I don't know, maybe
shifted.
And capitalism, and how each society has a way to produce their own food. Because I see in Latin America, it will be so easy to be vegetarian. Like in Latin America, there's still, having meat is still a luxury. People don't want to accept it. Meat is accessible, but if you compare the prices for beef and and any animal, and if you compare it with vegetables, which is like, we are the producers, you will have a much better diet with so much less money if you stay with the vegetables. But because society says like, no, if it's a sign of prosperity, it's a sign of success, you have to eat meat. Why are you eating those vegetables that anyone can get?
I don't think it's cheaper in America though.
So you reckon? But it's the way the industry is made, I will say. I mean,
until that shifts.
Exactly.
And I just don't think it'll shift yet. You know what I mean?
It won't.
And I think it'll take a long time before we'll be able to see anything like. I think it'll take just more people dying, and a change in our medical system to be able to push this, maybe even in our pharmaceutical systems. I don't know exactly. I don't like to subscribe to, and I've always been this type of a person, to methodologies, because in saying all of this, I still sometimes will eat fish, and I will still sometimes have a piece of meat. And I would say, like, in my mind, I'll be like, maybe it's just because I miss the taste. But sometimes I just feel better after eating it.
Oh, yes, that's true.
I just feel like, wow, I don't feel dizzy, or, you know what I'm saying? Like something. So, you know, this goes back to maybe 7,000, tons of our podcasts already where we've spoken about balance, you know, and that people are largely unique and largely individual. We can do many studies and you know, get generalities, but who do we do the study on usually, and what company is it for, and who's leading that campaign, or who's buying that, you know. So vegetables are important and they are necessary, and they're fundamental to our diet. And as we have seen in many poor and impoverished countries, vegetables save lives.
Oh, definitely.
You know, so there's no question there, you know. Is meat necessary? As far as I can tell, not particularly necessary. Has our culture made it a thing where it's not that it's in our DNA, but we've almost like grown with the evolution of our bodies adapting to meat?
Yeah, we're wired to.
It's like the cells like the meat. You know, they say like we need the protein for our brains to grow and blah, blah, blah. Not that we need necessarily meat, animal protein, but, you know, there's some interesting things there that I think to myself, like, well, you know, how can we do this without meat? You know, how can we, who knows, you know? Yeah. At the end of the day, I do think it's an individual choice, and I think that those of us right now who are able to be vegans or vegetarians, you know, it's because we can, and, you know, it is really sustainable for us, you know. I don't think that everyone has that opportunity. I do believe we will change into that type of a society where we will need meat, animal meat and animal protein less and less, but I just don't think it's going to be for a long time.
I agree. Like, I know, I will say that whatever decision you take every day, decisions, food, you don't think it, you just go for it and do it. It's good to stop and analyze. Why do we do it? Why am I eating this? And is there a better way to do it? And if you do your biased research and you agree with what we're doing is correct, keep doing it.
Thanks for listening. We want to know what you think.
Send us your comments and follow us on Twitter and Facebook
at #WannaCoffeePod.